everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chia. Today we're going to be doing my December wrap up. This month I read, try not to drop my pile of books. I read about 17 books in the month of December. That was the most books I've read in a month in the whole entire year of 2024. But the only main reason why I was able to read that much was because majority of it were novellas. I did read and I was able to catch up on a lot of series that I read for fantasy books, but I did read a lot of novellas because I was trying to catch up on my Goodreads goal for the year and I was able to reach it. Is it technically okay if like I read a lot of novellas, and a lot of them are Christmas books, so be prepared for that. The first book I'm going to be talking about is City of Gods and Monsters by Keila Edwards. This book is a chunker. It's about like 500 pages. I loved every single second of it. This follows a character named Lauren, and she is a human, and she lives in a city called Angelthine, where it's an urban fantasy, and during a night out with two of her girlfriends, her best friend gets kidnapped in her place. She is the only non-magical creature that is surrounded by all these other magical creatures. Darien Castle is a magical bounty hunter, and he uses auras to basically find his bounties, and he's a part of the City of Devils, which is like the #1 bounty hunters of this whole entire city. They're the most feared and the most ruthless. She ends up getting hunted by Darien Castle, but he finds out that she's a human and decides to be her bodyguard. So it's sort of a bodyguard trope with a close proximity, and I loved every single second of it. It's a very slow burn, like slowest of the slow. Nothing happens between the two characters until towards the end of the book. So if you are looking for a slow burn fantasy, look no further than City of Gods and Monsters. I am so obsessed with this world. Maybe a quarter of the way through, maybe like 100 or 200 pages of the way through, I knew I was going to be upset. Like, I felt it. And I knew it because I am already on the second book, and the second book is longer than this one. The only detriment that this book kind of has is that Lauren, I believe she's 20 years old, and she's very naive. She's human, and she's kind of like a damsel in distress, but at the same time she throws herself into situations where she gets kind of in trouble, and she's always not thinking ahead before she lets a lot of her emotions take control of her actions. And there's a couple of moments that I felt in the book that I was scratching my head thinking why she was doing these actions and why people had to go rescue her because of her actions. But overall, I love the characters in this book. There is a found family trope that is being set up for the next books, and already in the second books I see that there are different POVs that are being introduced, but I highly recommend this one, especially if you're looking for slow burn, close proximity romance with not necessarily a tough female main character. She's a lot weaker of a character than the female main characters that I'm pretty used to, especially when I'm dealing with a lot of strong female characters, but it's a refreshing rate to know that there are characters being written like this, and I heard she just gets better in the next few books and her character develops more. And she became less annoying in the last half of the book, so I was willing to read it more. And Darien Castle is one of those I will burn the world for her kind of characters, and you see him slowly fall for her more and more, and he's so obsessed with her. I love this world and can't wait to move on. The urban fantasy kind of world in this story, I feel like it's done a lot better than Crescent City was. I feel like Crescent City was a lot more tame than this one. I highly recommend picking it up. And then I finally finished Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. This book is about almost 800 pages, so it was very long, and I was able to get I believe this is the collector's first edition one. I didn't even realize that it was until I got it in Amazon. It has the rose on it. There is some illustrations in here, but I'm not going to show you because a lot of them are spoilery, especially spoilery for the couples that are in this book. I loved the ending of the series. It wrapped up a lot of things that I wanted wrapped up. The only thing that I couldn't give a 5 stars to was the end of the book. The end of the book kind of dragged on a bit, especially since it was trying to end with like battles and everything, but I feel like it included battles that should not have been there and an extra plot point that was trying to further the overarching conflict in this book that didn't really need to be in there. That's the reason why I couldn't really give it a 5 stars. I was so sad that I'm leaving these characters, and I can't believe I'm not gonna ever read a book again that is including the characters that I love in this book. The angst was angsting in this book. The pain, the feeling of wanting to bang your head against the wall because of how frustrated you were with the characters, especially the main male character, of the things that he should have confessed from the beginning, but he was too kind of ashamed to admit. But I highly recommend this series if you're looking for an angsty, character-based loving of the world, especially if you're already already know Shadowhunters world, I will always recommend this world because I love the Shadowhunters world so much and the characters make it for me. I also read A Steady and Drowning by Ava Reed. I put this book on so many TBRs over the past year, especially since my sister got this for me for my birthday earlier in 2024. I absolutely love this book. I devoured it. It follows a girl named Effie. She is a part of an architecture college in a program where she's the only female. Originally, she wanted to get into the literature program at her school. Unfortunately, they weren't allowing females in that part of the school, so she decided to go into the architecture program. She is having a tough time in this course because obviously it's not really what she wants to do, and all she wants to be is in the literature college. She's meeting a lot of oppression from the other students because she is the only female in this subject and they don't feel like she has what it takes. Also, she kind of has a trouble with one of the professors in there, so check your trigger warnings because it is really dark. But she ends up getting chosen to be the main architecture for her favorite author's house. As she gets there, she finds that the house is crumbling, so it's set at the edge of a cliff, so it could crumble at any second. I love how atmospheric this book was because of how the author described it. Ava Reed knows how to write her dark fantasies. It's very reminiscent to a lot of grim fairy tales kind of settings where it feels eerie and dark, and then how the author describes how dank the whole entire manor is and how everything is just crumbling apart. It just makes you feel eerie and you feel like the whole entire manor is gonna fall apart when you're in it. I guess you could say that it's sort of like a dark academia, but it's not really set in the school. Majority of the time she's at the manor and she meets sort of her academic rival in this manor, and she finds that he's trying to unravel her favorite author's work. He asks her to work with him to see if they can really discover the truth, and this truth they discover is a lot more shocking than they ever realized. And I love Ava Reed's writing. I can't wait to read more of her writing because I like how descriptive she was in this book. There is a little bit of love story, academic rivals to kind of lovers, but it's not the main focus. It's kind of just a subplot, and I highly recommend. I gave this a 4 stars. Next, I started off with my holiday Christmas romance reading, and I started off with In a Holidays. I read this on a road trip. I liked how bingeable this writing is. I want to read more of Christina Lauren's work. We follow a girl named Maylin Jones, and she and her family always go to this cabin in the snow every single Christmas that they spend with her childhood friends and also the friends of her family. So basically her parents met these people in college, and ever since then they've started the tradition of spending holidays with each other every year, and they started including their children too after they started growing families. So she has been going there ever since she was born, and she has a crush on one of her childhood best friends, but unfortunately he just sees her as a little sister because there is sort of like a 3-year age gap between them, and she's a lot closer to his little brother. And there's sort of like traditions of Christmas traditions are set in this story, like cutting down trees, like snowman building contests, but a lot of the kids are getting older and they're kind of getting tired of the traditions, and because of a situation where she finds out that they're gonna sell the cabin, she kind of gets upset and they get into a car crash that happens that sets her back into time, and she ends up reliving the same holiday over and over and over. I guess this was okay. It's one of the better Christmas romances that I read because of how bingeable it was, but the characters were okay, nothing really groundbreaking. I didn't really connect to them at all. It was kind of cute because it was sort of a friends to lovers kind of situation, but the only problem that I had was the love story between the two. I didn't like the fact that like some of the spicy scenes was happening inside the cabin when both their sets of parents are in the same said cabin. There's one point where the little brother kind of walks in on them making out. It was just plain awkward, and also I didn't like how forced the love story kind of was. It seemed like he was never really considerate of his feelings for her at all until she brought it up, and then it was like, oh, a light bulb moment where he's like, oh, maybe I should just try it with her. I don't know, I just didn't like how it was executed, but I guess I did like the atmosphere of this, and it's a perfect Christmas romance read. If you want to consider this for next Christmas, I highly recommend, and I gave it 3.5 stars. The next book I read was a part of the Under the Mistletoe novellas called Cruel Winter with You. The novellas are written by different romance authors. I don't know the other ones. I just recognize Ali Hazelwood. I've never read any other I never read any other Ali Hazelwood books. This is the first one that I've read, and I actually really liked it. This follows a character who is going over to her best friend's house to try to see if there's a roasting pan that she could borrow because her dad is cooking Christmas dinner. Inside, she finds her best friend's little brother, and her best friend's little brother always has had a crush on her since they were kids, and he confessed his feelings before when they were teenagers, but she told him that they weren't really compatible with each other because of the fact that he was her her best friend's little brother. And he's the only one home, and because of a snowstorm that happens, she ends up having to stay there. And I thought it was good. I thought it was written really well, and it makes me want to read other Ali Hazelwood books. The biggest problem that I had was the fact that the male main character, his name is Mark, he came off super strong. He came off with the feeling of, oh, I know you don't feel anything from me now, but I'm gonna keep trying because I feel like we should be together. And I just couldn't understand why he was being so pushy. Like, I get it, they grew up together and he felt like he wanted to be with her. It's just it came off really kind of creepy and really strong, and I wanted to tell him to slow down there a bit, my guy. So I gave this book a 3.5 stars. Another Christmas romance book I read was Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. This book is the exclusive Barnes & Noble edition. I love the color on this and the colorway on it, and also has like illustrations at the front as well, and also in the middle of it. I thought it was pretty good novella. Nothing really groundbreaking about it. Obviously, don't read this unless you finish the Carval trilogy, because it does spoil some things that happen in the Carval trilogy, because this takes place after the last book. And it's just a Christmas special that they're doing, try to find gifts for each other, running into the trope of I can't find the perfect gift for him, so I'm going to go through all the troubles of finding a gift when there's lessons that they have to learn at the end. But I thought it was okay. It didn't really need to be written, in all honesty, but I thought it was cute, and I miss the world so much, so I gave this book a 3 stars. The next novella I read was The Exception to the Rule. This was written by Christina Lauren. This book follows 2 characters who the male ends up accidentally emailing the female about a school assignment, so he thinks that he's emailing his professor, and they start sort of like a yearly correspondence with each other through emails, but they keep each other's identity and personal things private because they are minors when they first start emailing each other. They start emailing each other every single Valentine's Day and wish each other a happy Valentine's Day every single year, and have little mini conversations here and there for 10 years. And they're always trying to meet up with each other when they grow older, when they're in college age, but it never really works out. And then at the end you find out who they truly are to each other, and I absolutely love it. I love letter-based and email-based stories because You've Got Mail is one of my favorite movies of all time, and this reminds me of major You've Got Mail vibes, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was such a cute story. It was such a good novella for being 70 pages long, and you fell for the characters really, really fast. So I had to give this a 5 stars just because of how much it made me feel and how giddy I felt for the 2 characters when they finally met, and it was just amazing, and I highly recommend this novella. And it's a part of the Improbable Meet Cute novellas as well. That Improbable Meet Cute has a lot of different romance authors written, and it's sort of like a Valentine's Day themed. The next novella I read was All Systems Red. All Systems Red is a part of the Murderbot Diaries, which follows a robot who is sort of commissioned to be a murder bot who goes and accompanies people on missions to protect them, to run security detail with them, and also to kill any threat against these people. But this murder bot character has found a way to override the commands of a company that they're a part of, and they find a way to hide that they overridden the commands of the company, and the only thing that they care about is watching its favorite series, which I can heavily relate on because they don't care about anything. They don't care about the characters, they don't care about the mission, nothing. All they want to do is complete the mission and go back to watching its favorite shows, and I highly recommend, because it's so engrossing to read into this book and find a different take on a sci-fi character, and that is a robot and it's not a human, taking the POV from. So I want to continue with the rest of the novellas. I think there's 7 novellas that are in this series, and I think there's a full book as well, but I highly recommend, and I gave it a 4 stars. The next novella I read was Merry Ever After, and this is another book for Under the Mistletoe, and this book was written by Tessa Bailey. I have heard that her writing is very spicy, so I was very hesitant on entering her novella, and I was very right, because this book was just plain spice. Literally, the characters are strangers in a town, and the character who moves into the town, it's a small Texas town, and she moves to the town to get away from her past because she has a 5-month-old son, and she just wants to completely start over, and she works at a thrift store. And the male main character kind of comes to this thrift store trying to find jeans to fit him because he is a bigger farmer, and there's so many emphasis on how big his stature is. He kind of wants to date her the first time that they meet, and he only comes back to that particular thrift store just to see her. Because of some situation, the female main character takes it upon herself to basically make clothes for him because he can't find any size that fits him for his jeans. So she makes jeans for him, and it gets spicy really, really fast, like very, very fast. The spice scene that happens literally only maybe 10-20 pages into the novella is so cringe. I can't believe I read that and I rated a 1 star, and I do not recommend whatsoever. And this makes me very hesitant on reading any of Tessa Bailey's other work. Let me know in the comments if I should, because maybe it's just because it was a novella, so it felt like really super rushed with all the spy scenes and everything, but I do not recommend whatsoever. One of the worst reads of the year. Next book I read was All But My Elf by Olivia Dade. This is another book that is a part of the Under the Mistletoe collection. We follow a female main character who works as sort of like a professor, and they are drafted by their supervisor to drive this sort of like phyllo wiener van where it's sort of like a sausage wrapped Philos. It sounds so ridiculous, but they are tasked to drive this around to promote the company, and she and 2 other colleagues are set to drive this around for the majority of the time in December, and she has a crush on the male main character who is one of her colleagues, and her best friend is along the way as well. There's sort of like a miscommunication thing where she thinks her best friend is really interested in the male main character. They are set to travel around the whole entire, like, I guess East Coast, like Washington DC area, where they have to promote this and give like little speeches and stuff about the wiener van that they're in. I hated the fact that there were so many wiener jokes. Like every single time there was a male or anything that passed by their truck and she was driving, they would always make a wiener joke, and it was so unnecessary. There's sort of like a spicy scene that happens between the 2 characters, the female main character and the male main character, that happens inside the van, and I just thought that was so cringe, that it was such a terrible setting for this spicy scene to happen. So I gave it a 2 stars. Nothing memorable again, and I wish I could erase it from my mind. If you are going to read the Under the Mistletoe collection this coming Christmas in 2025, because obviously it's already past 2024 Christmas, if you're gonna read these series of novellas, I only recommend the one by Ali Hazelwood, because the rest are just straight up trash. I decided not to read the last 2 because I was just over Christmas novellas at that point. Take my opinion as you will, but I thought they were complete trash. Next book I read was also part of the Improbable Me Cute, and it's called The Worst Wingman Ever. This follows a character who is a nurse, and she ends up finding a note on her dashboard. In the note, it states that it's sort of like a Valentine's love note, but she finds out that the note was not for her. This was cute. They communicate to each other through notes on her car, and he ends up doing little things for her that kind of like looks over her and looks after her without knowing each other. It was cute. It's just that the plot was okay, and I didn't find any sort of like any memorable characters in it. And in all honesty, it kind of was hard for me to remember the plot of this book, so I gave it a 3 stars. The next book I read was How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn. This book follows a character named Story, and she has to go live in a small Colorado town called Kringletown, but it's like a Christmas themed town, 365 days a year, and it's just Christmased out. But she has to go to this small town to take care of her aunt who has been injured, and she sort of has an enemies to lovers dynamic with her neighbor, because they knew each other as kids, because she used to visit every single year for Christmas but stopped right before she got into college and didn't come back for 10 years. And he's sort of mad at her for stuff that happened in the past, for not coming back for 10 years, and she ends up joining a contest called the Christmas Kringle Contest, and it's sort of a contest to see who has the most Christmas spirit, and there's sort of like Christmas spies who go all over the place looking at these contestants, making sure that they have the most Christmas spirit. And of course the male main character has a problem against Story joining this contest, even though she's doing it for her aunt, because he doesn't feel that she deserves to win it since she's not a part of the town. And despite the fact that she's doing it for his aunt, he takes it upon himself to join this contest to sort of best her and kind of shove it in her face that he wants to win. So that's the whole entire dynamic, the whole entire book. But I gave this book a 2 stars. I did not like the dialogue whatsoever. The dialogue was very cringy. I didn't like how the whole entire time they were focused on sexual innuendos, using Christmas themed sexual innuendos. I hated it. And there's a scene in here that included the use of a Christmas candy cane that was very unhygienic. Halfway through the book, I started getting so bored because I didn't understand why it had to be 500 pages. Why did this book have to be 500 pages when it's a when it's a Christmas romance book, and it turned spicy really fast. So when they finally got over the solution to their problems, it got swept over really fast, especially since the male main character seemed determined to hold a grudge against the female main character. And the male main character was so insufferable. He took grumpiness to the max with the way he treated the female main character. I could not root for them whatsoever because of how cringy everything was, and I do not recommend whatsoever, and I don't honestly think that it should have been this long. But rant over. So So no, I don't recommend this book at all. Next Christmas romance book I read was The Christmas Tree Farm by Lori Gilmore. And this book is a part of the Dream Harbor series that came out a few months ago. It started off with the Pumpkin Spice Cafe and then the Cinnamon Bun Store, and it follows couples. It's set in a town called Dream Harbor, and this one particularly follows a girl who moves into a Christmas tree farm that she wants to sort of turn it into a homestead, but she realizes that this homestead needs money and customers, and she doesn't have any because she decided to strike it out on her own away from her wealthy parents. And she wanted to prove that she can be independent from her wealthy parents because her twin managed to do it and move far across the world in order to be with the love of her life, and she's never really done anything by herself. And so a character comes along named Bennett, and she kind of describes him as sort of a Clark Kent, Henry Cavill kind of character where he's tall, and she tries to make her Christmas tree farm work because she wants it to be successful, and he kind of stumbles along to the Christmas tree farm while walking 3 of his dogs. And of course she loves the dogs, but she's completely rude to him, and she's unnecessarily rude to the small town characters also. They come by to be welcoming, they drop off food to her and welcome her into their town, and I don't understand why she was super rude to any of them. It's Grumpy Sunshine, and also he is the type of character where he is the savior complex kind of character where he just wants to fix all her problems. I don't know, I felt it kind of weird. I didn't like how spicy it got really fast. Wow. I don't like how it really got spicy super fast. It kind of felt really insta-lovey because the moment they met, despite the fact that they had a bad interaction, they started looking at each other all lustful. Spice scenes were very cringy, and the last half of the book was just spice scenes. There was a good moment at the end where it's kind of solved the third act conflict where he did sort of a scavenger hunt kind of in the Christmas trees. I don't know. I don't recommend it at all. It's 3 stars, and I don't know if I'll continue the rest of the books because I didn't connect to the characters whatsoever, and the female main character made me really upset at times because of how grumpy she was being. Because girl, you do not need to be that grumpy. Apologies for any change in lighting or any change in angles. I had to stop filming for a little bit because apparently my camera was overheating. The next book I read was With Any Luck, and that was another book that is a part of the Improbable Meet Cute series. And this one, I guess you could say that it's very similar to Abby Jimenez's Just for the Summer. It's a female main character who is cursed with, after ending a relationship, she finds that the person who was in the relationship ends up finding the love of their life right afterwards. And this one takes place with her, and her best friend is getting married, and she's sort of the best man. She ends up losing her best friend the night of the bachelor party that she plans, and it's a full-on hunt. Also being kind of like connected to the bride's best friend, who is also a bride's male or whatever, and they end up having to team together. But I thought it was cute. It was okay. Nothing special. I gave it 3 stars. Nothing terrible, nothing bad. It's just not really memorable. So 3 stars. And the last Christmas read that I read in the month of December was My December Darling. This was the last Christmas book. By this point, I was already Christmas booked out. I was over the holiday festivities and holiday cheers in these books and holiday romances. This book was a nice, refreshing read because it takes place in a sort of coastal town. I guess this book is a part of the Lakefront Billionaire series that Lauren Asher has written. And I haven't read any Lauren Asher books, and this actually made me want to read her books. It was very digestible, the characters were not annoying, and the female main character, she's sort of like a hard exterior person where you have to take the time and take the chance to get to know her, and that's what the male main character does. They're both the maid of honor and the best man to her sister and her sister's fiance's wedding, and I guess they show up in the Lakefront Billionaires series. I liked the story. It was really good. They're bonded over common hobbies that they like. They like building Legos together, so he ends up buying like a Millennium Falcon for them to work on because it's, I guess, a big project that he wants to be able to work on it with her because she's mentioned in the past before that she wanted this Lego set. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was cute. I thought it was a great way to wrap up all the Christmas romance that I read, and I like the fact that it was set in sort of a coastal town feeling, and I love coastal town settings because of how cozy and warm it gets with the characters, and I feel like it's sort of like a small town without being a super small town kind of vibe. But I highly recommend, and I want to read more of Lauren Asher's books, so I think I'm going to start with her Dreamland Billionaire series because I heard that one was good too, and then I'll move on to her Lakefront Billionaire series. And the next book I read was my reread of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I've been wanting to reread these books so badly, but thankfully my boyfriend was able to get me this Christmas the whole entire hardcover series. I wanted to get a new copy of all my Harry Potter books because my copy is all at my parents' house, and they're sort of like hand-me-downs that have no covers and kind of what I had to read when I was a kid. Of course, I had to reread The Sorcerer's Stone first, and this book reminds me of first picking up the series and the nostalgia factor. And I don't need to really give a synopsis of this because I'm sure everyone and their moms knows what the story is about, but I love the magic in this book and how it starts off with this found family that I didn't realize that this was the first found family that I ever read until I started reading more tropes. And this book is the perfect found family because of how magical and wonderful it is, and it reminds me of being back in 6th grade and discovering this book for the first time. So of course I give this a 5 stars, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. And the last book I read in the month of December was Vows and Ruins by Helen Scher. This book is the second book in the Legends of Thesmar series. I love how it continues on with the series from the first book. The first book is Blood and Steel, and I absolutely devoured that book. And of course I wanted to finish the rest of the series because the sort of like sequel to the series, not necessarily sequel, but like a spin-off, is coming out this month actually. And this book is the second book of the series, and it continues on with the plot, but I didn't like how spicy it was. Just to give a little synopsis, obviously I can't go into this book too much because it is the second book in the series, and this book follows a female main character named Althea, and Althea's dream has always wanted to be a part of the war swords of Thesmar. And unfortunately in this world, women are not allowed to pick up swords or any weapons of any sort because of a prophecy that stated that if any female picked up swords, that their world would be ended. And I like the fact that she is such a badass female main character, and she proves herself through all of the training that she's had to do to become a war sword. And I like the action scenes in this book because there is a main plot that they have to figure out about this world that includes shadow wraiths. And the shadow wraiths are ravishing. I can never remember any words when I'm doing these videos. Are running havoc in their worlds, and they are killing people and turning humans into shadow wraiths. And I like the magic system in this book as well. You discover more about the magic system and how it works. It's sort of a, I guess you could say, kings and queens kind of plot, but not necessarily, because it's more focused on a action plot where the female main character wants to be more a war sword and fighting on the battlefield. I like the discovery of the past that she has and the past of the characters, and the love story that starts happening between these two characters. It's sort of a trainer-trainee kind of trope, and there's a constant back and forth between the two, and I love the banter between the characters. They are one of my favorite couples of all time. I loved the dynamic they had between each other, and I liked the fact that he's not very as protective of her as he wants to be because he knows she needs to learn how to handle herself. But the only thing that couldn't make me give it a 5 stars was because there's spicy scene after spicy scene in this book. It's like every other chapter there's a spicy scene happening between these two characters. I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars just because I love the world so much. Anyways, that's it for all the books that I read in December. That was a lot to get through. I didn't realize how many Christmas novellas I read. Overall, I think it was a pretty mediocre month for me. I didn't get any 5 stars, and I was kind of disappointed with one of the books that I predicted was going to be 5 stars because I gave the first 2 books in the series a 5 stars. It's okay because I still enjoyed the Last Hour series nonetheless. I might not read that many Christmas books again this year, so we shall see. But thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments below if you read any of the books that I read or what was your best and worst reads of the month of December. And this is the last wrap up of 2024. Now all of my end of the year content is done, so I'm going to be moving on to full on 2025 content, and I'm so excited for that. And here's to happy reading for all of us. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more videos like this and want to see more from me in the future. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.